Brothers and sisters, open your eyes and listen carefully. Watch this video till the end, because it is your right to know the truth. Today, I will speak about something that many in the so-called free world.
In the bustling heart of a city where power whispered in the dark corridors of government and justice often wore a mask of deceit, Ibrahim Traoré stood as a figure many underestimated. Known to some as a revolutionary with unshakable resolve, he had grown used to navigating treacherous waters. But this time, the tides were different. The name that now reached his ears carried a weight of corruption so deep it threatened to rot the very pillars of justice. Judge Thomas and his mysterious partner known only as Crow. The rumors began as faint murmurs, spoken in hushed tones by those who fear the consequences of being overheard. Whispers of missing funds, manipulated trials, and verdicts bought and sold like cheap trinkets at a marketplace. For months, Ibrahim listened, quietly observing, knowing that to act prematurely could end in failure, or worse, betrayal. Crow, they said, was the unseen hand that pulled strings in the shadows, a figure whose identity was as elusive as smoke in the night. Ibrahim's first real lead came from a disillusioned clerk, a young woman named Sophia, who had once worked under Judge Thomas. Her eyes bore the exhaustion of someone who had carried secrets too heavy for too long. She met Ibrahim in a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of the city, her voice trembling as she recounted how verdicts were altered, how innocent people were sentenced to prison while the guilty walked free, all because envelopes of cash changed hands behind closed doors. Judge Thomas, she whispered, isn't alone. There's someone else. They call him Crow. I don't know his real name, but every time a case of importance comes up, Thomas gets a phone call late at night. The next morning, everything changes. Ibrahim leaned forward, his sharp eyes locking onto hers. Do you have proof? She hesitated, pulling a small flash drive from her bag. This is all I could say before I left. Court records, financial transactions, some of them lead to offshore accounts. But if you're going after them, you have to be careful. People who dig too deep, they disappear. That night, Ibrahim returned to his modest office, where the only light came from a flickering desk lamp. He inserted the flash drive into his laptop, scrolling through documents that painted a picture of corruption more extensive than he had imagined. Payments from shell companies, properties purchased under false names, cases overturned for the highest bidder. It was a web of deceit with threads stretching far beyond the courtroom. The next step was clear. He needed more than documents. He needed to expose them in a way they could not deny. He began to track Judge Thomas's movements, discreetly placing trusted allies near his usual haunts. The courthouse, the private club where he dined, the secluded villa he retreated to on weekends. Crow, however, remained a ghost. There were no photos, no public records, only the occasional encrypted message that passed between his associates. Weeks turned into months as Ibrahim pieced together the puzzle. One evening, while reviewing intercepted communications, his team finally caught a break, a scheduled meeting between Judge Thomas and Crow at a high-profile charity gala. Ibrahim knew this was his chance. The night of the gala, the city's elite gathered beneath glittering chandeliers, their laughter echoing to the grand hall as cameras flashed and champagne flowed. Dressed in an unassuming black suit, Ibrahim moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his presence unnoticed by those two wrapped up in their own opulence. From a corner balcony, he spotted Thomas, a tall man with a polished smile that never quite reached his eyes. Moments later, a figure approached him. Crow. To the untrained eye, Crow was just another wealthy benefactor, but Ibrahim noted the small, deliberate gestures, the way others seemed to defer to him without question. He watched as the two men slipped into a private lounge, unaware of the tiny recording device Ibrahim had planted earlier that day. What followed was damning. The recording captured their conversation in full. Plans to manipulate an upcoming case involving millions in public funds, discussions of payoffs, threats to silence a key witness. Crow's voice, calm and calculated, revealed far more than he intended. With this evidence in hand, Ibrahim set his plan into motion. Rather than leaking the recording immediately, he chose to gather the final piece of the puzzle, the money trail. Through careful coordination with international partners, he traced the funds from the corrupt cases to a series of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Dubai, all connected to Judge Thomas and Crow through a maze of shell corporations. When the time came, Ibrahim did not go to the press first. Instead, he organized a public tribunal, inviting journalists, legal experts, and representatives of the people. The event was broadcast live across the nation, a spectacle no one could ignore. On the stage, Ibrahim presented the evidence piece by piece. The documents, the financial records, the recording from a gala. Faces in the audience shifted from curiosity to shock, then to outrage. Judge Thomas, summoned to attend under the guise of defending his name, sat pale and sweating under the bright lights. Crow, however, did not appear. His absence only fueled the public suspicion. The revelation sent shockwaves through the city. Protests erupted outside the courthouse, demanding immediate action. International agencies stepped in to investigate, and within weeks, arrest warrants were issued. Judge Thomas, once untouchable, was led away in handcuffs, his fall from grace as swift as it was complete. Crow, ever the shadow, fled the country, but not before his assets were frozen and his influence dismantled. Ibrahim, however, did not celebrate. He knew this victory was only one battle in a larger war against corruption. In private, he reflected on the price of exposing such men. The threats, the sleepless nights, the allies who had risked everything to help him. Yet he also knew that truth, once revealed, had a power that could not easily be silenced. Months later, as the city began to rebuild its trust in the justice system, Ibrahim received a letter. It was unsigned, delivered by hand. Inside was a single sentence. "You have won this time, but the crow always returns." He folded the letter, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. Let them come, he thought. The fight was far from over. The city of Viridian had long been a place where power was traded like currency, and justice was often a performance for the cameras. Behind the grand marble pillars of the courthouse, secrets festered, and behind the gold-framed doors of private clubs, deals were struck that determined the fate of thousands. For years, Judge Thomas had ruled the courtrooms like a monarch, his verdicts shaping industries, silencing whistleblowers, and protecting the wealthy who lined his pockets. And in the shadows there was Crow, an elusive figure whose influence extended far beyond the courtroom, a man who whispered promises and threats with equal ease. Ibrahim Traoré was not a man who sought the spotlight. His name was known to those who followed politics, but he operated from the ground up, not the top down. His reputation was one of relentless pursuit of truth, the kind of man who would walk barefoot through fire if it meant bringing light to the darkness. When reports began to surface of missing development funds, manipulated tenders, and suspicious acquittals, his instincts told him the same names would emerge again: Thomas and Crow. At first, there were only fragments, rumors traded between disillusioned prosecutors, murmurs in the dimly lit corridors of the courthouse, anonymous tips sent in encrypted messages. But each fragment led to another, and soon Ibrahim saw the outline of something much larger, a network of corruption spanning banks, government contracts, and foreign companies. Judge Thomas was the face of legitimacy, Crow the invisible hand pulling strings. The breakthrough came unexpectedly in a meeting with a middle-aged accountant named Jonas Cabaret. Jonas had worked for a construction firm that mysteriously won multiple high-value government contracts despite its lack of experience. Sitting across from Ibrahim in a small, unremarkable office, Jonas laid it bare. "They funnel the money through us," Jonas said, his hands trembling slightly as he slid over a thick envelope of photocopied ledgers. "We overcharge the government. The excess is split. Judge Thomas approves settlements and dismisses lawsuits that could expose them. And Crow is the one who decides who gets paid and who gets silenced." Ibrahim scanned the documents, his mind already racing through connections. "Why tell me this now?" Jonas leaned in, his voice almost a whisper. "Because they are preparing something bigger. A land acquisition deal that will displace thousands. And this time, they're not even hiding it well. If you don't stop them, no one will." The name Crow remained a ghost in every investigation. Some said he was a businessman. Others claimed he was an intelligence operative. What was certain was that his network ran deep enough to intimidate witnesses, erase evidence, and ensure that even honest officers turned a blind eye. Ibrahim assembled a discreet team of investigators, journalists, and digital analysts. They worked in the shadows, operating out of safe houses and communicating through encrypted channels. Slowly, they mapped the money flow. Contract awarded to shell companies, legal rulings overturned in exchange for property shares, and millions moved to offshore accounts in the Seychelles and Cyprus. Their first big move was surveillance. One of Ibrahim's allies, a young tech expert named Layla, managed to infiltrate the courthouse's digital archives. There, they discovered secret correspondences between Judge Thomas and an unidentified email address linked to Crow. The tone was always the same, cold, transactional, laced with veiled threats. And then, one message caught Ibrahim's eye. Ensure the case against Horizon Minerals is dismissed. The payment will arrive in 3 installments. Our mutual friend will handle the press. Horizon Minerals. That was a company currently accused of illegal mining that had poisoned an entire river valley. The people had protested for months, but their voices were fading as court dates dragged on. Now it was clear why. Ibrahim knew he couldn't confront them directly. Not yet. Exposing men like Thomas and Crow required precision, not force. He set a trap. Through one of his contacts in the ministry, Ibrahim leaked a false document suggesting that a foreign anti-corruption task force was about to audit Horizon Minerals and its legal dealings. As expected, panic rippled through their network. Judge Thomas began making hurried phone calls. Crow's encrypted account showed increased activity, and their intermediary scrambled to move money before it was frozen. Layla intercepted a message. Meet at the Blackwood estate. Midnight. We finalized and moved everything offshore. That was the moment, under the cloak of darkness. Ibrahim and his team positioned discreet surveillance vans near the estate, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city known for hosting discreet political gatherings. Cameras hidden in decorative flower pots, microphones embedded in gift baskets. Everything was in place. At midnight, a convoy of luxury cars arrived. Judge Thomas stepped out first, his face tense but determined. Moments later, a tall, slender man with a hawk-like gaze followed. Crow. It was the first time Ibrahim had seen him in the flesh. The two entered the estate, unaware that every word they spoke would soon echo far beyond those walls. Inside, the conversation was everything Ibrahim had hoped for. They discussed payoffs, named accomplices in high places, and even debated how much public outrage they could manipulate with the help of controlled media outlets. Crow's arrogance was his undoing. He boasted about their network, their offshore routes, even the judges in neighboring regions they had on their payroll. By dawn, Ibrahim had more than enough evidence to bring them down. But he also knew the danger of releasing it prematurely. They had allies, wealthy, powerful ones, who could spin the story, dismiss it as fabricated, or worse, retaliate violently. He went international. Through secure channels, he shared the recordings, bank trails, and court manipulations with an independent coalition of investigative journalists and anti-corruption units abroad. Within a week, a coordinated expose was launched. Front-page stories, primetime broadcasts, viral online leaks. The world now knew the names of Judge Thomas and Crow, their photographs plastered across every platform. Viridian erupted. Protests shook the Capitol. Students, lawyers, and workers marched side by side demanding justice. The Parliament, under immense pressure, initiated an emergency session to suspend Judge Thomas. Crow, ever the shadow, attempted to flee, but international warrants closed borders faster than his influence could open them. Judge Thomas was arrested in his chambers, his face pale and drawn as officers led him past flashing cameras. Crow was captured weeks later in a private jet headed for Dubai, betrayed by one of his own lieutenants who sought a deal to save himself. But for Ibrahim, the work was not yet done. Exposing corruption was one thing. Ensuring it never resurged was another. He pushed for systemic reforms, digitalized tender systems, independent judicial oversight, and whistleblower protections. It was an uphill battle, and enemies still lurked in the shadows, but the tide had turned. Months later, as Ibrahim walked through the streets of Viridian, now buzzing with cautious hope, a child ran up to him with a note. No signature, just a few words. You clipped the crow's wings. But remember, crows always find a way to return.